time for every CPC owner to become a pinball wizard. Pinball Dreams, a 1992 game by Digital Illusions, released by 21st Century Entertainment, who were of course the successors to Hewson after they went under. An iconic 16-bit game. I say iconic 16-bit game, the ST didn't actually get a version, but there are versions for the PC and the SNES, as well as the 8-bit Game Boy and Game Gear. The thing about Pinball Dreams was its realistic ball physics and the large scrolling table, and 8-player action as well. This is Beatbox, my favourite table, running on my Amiga 1200. It's colourful, it's noisy, there's loads of samples, it has all the sensations of pinball other than the smell of the amusement arcade. So how can you port this to an 8-bit system? Well, they did it for the Game Gear and Game Boy, but the Amstrad CPC? This game was first mentioned in 2016 as being in development, and some people thought it was slightly implausible. Idiots. Total idiots, in fact. So run this on a 6128, and it's 128K only, takes up 2 sides of a 3-inch disc, and there's also a version for a 3.5-inch disc if you download it, but I'm running this off my M4 card. It's produced by the Batman Group. And as you can see, so far it's been very faithful to the Amiga version. Rhino has done the game coding, and we've got disc loader by Arnold EMU, and various people contributing to the graphics and sound. It's been in development for quite a while. In fact, I believe it's been finished for quite a while as well, because they wanted to do a box release, but that fell through in negotiations, so it's free to download. And this is the first hint that things to come may be pretty special, because it's a very authentic realisation of the Amiga menu screen. And the AY chip is pumping out the familiar music as well. And they do say original hardware and monitor required for the best experience. So the thing about the CPC is it doesn't have any hardware scrolling. So how on earth they're doing this, I have no idea. Some kind of witchcraft, I imagine. 3.5 MHz Z80 CPU with no hardware assistance on the graphics. Still, the ball won't run smoothly, will it? Tilt function works. And the ball does run smoothly, and the game seems to be running at 50 frames a second, which is astonishing. Oh, I'm quite frankly blown away by everything else to pay attention to what I'm actually doing. There doesn't seem to be any sound samples, but that would be far-fetched on the CPC. Amiga version running on the side and Amiga Music for comparison. So you can see the frame rate is about the same, if not exactly the same. The CPC version is more zoomed out. Presumably that could be memory constraints. I think you've probably got potentially slightly more pixels on the screen than you would have on a standard CPC screen, because although you've got the black bars at the side, we're going higher up into the border, top and bottom. It feels, I mean, it's astonishing. And look at the use of colours as well. I never liked Ignition as a table, so let's go on to Steel Wheel, which is traditionally always the table I did best on the Amiga. I'm not a pinball expert, by the way, and I am playing on capture delay as well. Amiga version for comparison. And it's so close, it's the ball physics. That's the thing that really gets me, how close this feels. You flip between these versions on the Amiga and the CPC, and really, other than the graphics being slightly zoomed out and the louder colours on the CPC, there's not a lot in it. A CPC being, of course, being constrained by having only 27 colours. The graphics people have to work with what they've got. On the Amiga, they've got 4096, so you can do what you like pretty much. But look how they've used the colours they've got to get those lovely gradations at the top of the screen there to indicate the levels of the ramp. They go from grey to blue to purple to try and simulate that, and it works really well. And up on the CRT, that melds down into something even nicer to look at. There's been so many previews of this game online that I thought the impact of it may be taken away when I came to play it, because everyone and their dog seems to have had a preview video out. So when I came to play it, I've just been astonished how it handles, because I've kind of seen the graphics and how it can do this full screen stuff, but nothing takes away from you actually seeing it on your Amstrad running for the first time. We're doing quite well on this table. Just forwarded it on. I'm up to 11 million now. I always did do well on Steel Wheel. It's the easiest table any idiot can play on Steel Wheel. I think Ignition is supposed to be the easiest. It's not, in my opinion. Considering I'm on capture delay as well, and I'm having to keep an eye on the capture as it runs, because it does like stopping, I'm not doing too badly. Techniques of Pinball Dreams, by the way, I'm told by hardened pinball players, do not use both flippers at the same time, because you're liable to have the ball go underneath. Although, yeah, like that. I don't think I could have rescued that. I'm not an expert pinball player. What do I say? Is that... Oh, I've got a high score. Good. Wonder if that saves that disc. I don't know. Next up's going to be my favourite table. And remember, your 2020 ChinnyVision calendars are now available at ChinnyVision.com. A3 in size, glossy cover, $16.99 for UK or EU delivery, and just a little bit more if you're further afield. 11 formats, all real hardware, as ChinnyVision has. And it's a really nice calendar, so get yours today from ChinnyVision.com. All profits support the channel. Over to Beatbox. This is my favourite table. Graphics are a little bit louder than the Amiga, but as I say, that's unavoidable. You're stuck with CPC orange and green because they are the orange and greens you have. Crunchy bass line on the soundtrack. The other thing to mention about the soundtrack is we're listening on stereo speakers at the moment. It sounds great through the mono speaker on the back of the CPC as well. Every thought seems to have been given to this game to make it look good on the original hardware, down to using as many colours as they can via stippling the colours through to making sure it sounds good on the speaker. There's no samples in the game. That would be too much, I think, because it's the memory that's going to kill that. No doubt the Batman group could find some clever way of playing samples without making the Z80 have to pause everything. But where are you going to put that sample data? I'm betting pretty much all of the 128K of memory is used. There's no tape version of this game. And by the way, this is the Amiga version at full size. And let's go over to what happens if I zoom up the CPC version to that size. No doubt if they could get it up to the size, it'd be more detailed and less jerky because obviously I've zoomed in. But that at least gives you a direct comparison against the Amiga versus the CPC at the same size. I think this decision to zoom out is absolutely fine. At the end of the day, this isn't a replacement for Pinball Dreams on the Amiga, it's a CPC version. Over to the Nightmare table, my least favourite table in the game, it's the hardest. CPC's colours suit this though, especially the green there. Looks very ghost and ghoulish. This game's been ready for some time, but the release fell through. I think they were going to do a proper box release, but they couldn't negotiate that, so they've just put it out as a free download. And I'll put details of that in the description below. Now, I'm a CPC fanboy, so you have to take what I say with a pinch of salt. So what I thought I'd do is I'd speak to someone from outside the CPC community who's familiar with Pinball Dreams. So over to Tane Piper.
Credit where it's due. This is a fantastic conversion. The graphics themselves are as close as you can get on an 8-bit machine to the original, and the use of color is well done. The controls are very responsive, and the frame rate means this conversion is very enjoyable and still holds the tension of the original.
Thanks to Tane Piper for that. Just a view from outside the immediate retro community of what a Amiga Pinball Dreams owner thinks of this CPC conversion. What do I say about Pinball Dreams on the CPC? Well, it's been a long time coming. In some ways, you think the power of playing this would be taken away, diminished somewhat by the fact there's just been lots of previews and people playing it again and again on YouTube and showing it off. And yet, nothing prepares you for loading it up on your 6128 and seeing that scrolling and those ball physics. It is not a replacement for the Amiga game. It is an Amstrad version of the game. As such, it has to make best use of the hardware available. The samples are missing. You've got to expect that. The screen is zoomed out. I think you also have to expect that as well. But that's not taking away from a game that is simply stunning. Imagine if CPC releases had been like this back in the day. And some people say, why weren't they? Well, they couldn't be because people didn't have modern development techniques. They didn't have the time because games had to be developed under a very limited time budget because there were commercial companies producing games, and they had the restrictions of often having to produce a Spectrum version at the same time and share resources between all the versions. Today we have modern development techniques. You can draw your graphics on a PC or Mac and then port that across the CPC. You can run your CPC in a virtual machine, an emulator, and develop on there, so you can tweak things without having to crash the entire real Amstrad and all that stuff. And that's why the Batman group have done so well on this stuff, because they've leveraged everything possible and used a lot of time to develop it. It's a huge technical achievement to get CPC throwing the graphics around in the way that it does. But it's not just the graphics, it's not just the sound, it's the ball physics and the way the game feels. You can flip between the Amiga and the CPC. The CPC version feels right, which can't be said of some of the other Pinball Dreams ports to different systems. It's a hugely spectacular feat to do this on the CPC. Yes, I know I'm a CPC fanboy, and yet I believe you'd have to have a heart of stone if you owned any other system and not look at this and go, wow, that's an achievement. It's a 3.5 megahertz Z80 processor with 128K of memory and no graphics hardware assistance. And it's doing all this just with the CPU and just the hardware the machine has got. It is frankly astonishing. No matter if you're a hardened CPC user or somebody who's never played a CPC before, get your machine, get your emulator and download this game from the link below. You won't regret it. And the only words this CPC owner of 34 years has for the Batman Group is, well done.